environmental sociology. Environmental sociology is a unique branch of knowledge which is emerging and has a very recent approach and contemporary approach, I must say. So, it is a knowledge which helps us to understand the various aspects of environment related with social sciences, humanities as well as science. So, here we find interdisciplinary room for research and further discourses. Environmental sociology is something which is very much fascinating and an interesting subject for further researches on environment. Here we are not only discussing the scientific treatise, but we are also trying to highlight the theories related to humanities and social sciences which I have already mentioned. Environmental sociology is a branch of knowledge which helps the researchers to think more on environment. With this regard, I must say, what does environment mean for us? We need to understand the cultural contexts of environment or naturalism. In India, how we treat environment, how we deal with environment. What is environment for us? We talk on Mother Earth. We celebrate 5th June as the day for environment, the World Environment Day. But what is environment? If we try to find out its essence from our culture, from our roots. From that perspective, I must say we need to see how Indian philosophy deals with environment. In Indian philosophy, we have seen environment comes in many ways. We have also noticed how Indian philosophy talks on atoms, how Indian philosophy talks on karma, and how it tries to link karma with naturalism. So, here we find a fine blend of hypothetical or some of the thoughts which are absurd, which are philosophical, which are ontological and metaphysical, and also epistemological. But also these thoughts could be justified in the light of science. I must say, when we talk on Indian philosophy, when we talk on the Nyaya system, there they have belief on naturalism. But when we talk on Advaitavad, that gives emphasis on non-naturalism. We need to understand these various critical junctures of Indian philosophy and the ways to look at environment. These ideas are very much linked with the cosmic world, which is also a part of knowing the creation theory. So, let us indulge ourselves in this journey of knowing naturalism, nature or environment in the light of Indian philosophy. I would like to say something on the theory of atomism, or how in Indian philosophy we have seen atoms. So, atoms were described in Indian philosophy as Paramanubad, or the theories on atoms were described as Paramanubad. In the Shastras like Nyaya Vaisheshika, Buddhist and also in Jain texts, we find the treatise on Paramanubad. Shankha thinkers, they had a unique idea of the transformation of the world. According to them, it was the result of the evolution which we had from the Ur or the nature or the Mula Prakriti. If I would like to start with Naya Vaisheshika, like how in this particular branch of Indian philosophy, Paramanubad or atoms were described. Like Greek atomism, Indian atomism was speculative and local. So here we find like how the Indian philosophers, they tried to incorporate the theories on atoms in the local environment. That means the local environment or the climate was very much important for them to justify the scientific theories related to atoms or paramanu, where they tried to color these theories with the light of philosophy or philosophical enlightenment. The roots of Indian atomism can be traced back to the Upanishadic doctrine of 5 elements. So when we talk on atoms, we need to understand that in the Upanishads, we have the theories related to the 5 elements which have constituted the world or the earth as per those Upanishadic doctrines, which are these Pancha Bhutas or Pancha Mahabhutas: earth, water, fire, air and bomb or akasa, that means sky. According to the Naya Vaisheshika philosophers, the first 4 elements are of 2 types: eternal and non-eternal. Atoms are eternal while composite wholes are non-eternal, since every product is eventually destroyed. So when we are talking on Pancha Mahabhutas like earth, water, fire, air, bomb or akasa or sky, and these all are responsible for the making of earth. Here when we talk on Pancha Mahabhutas, there earth means soil. So here we find like how the Indian philosophers, they were trying to make a link between these Pancha Mahabhutas and atom, and they were trying to say that some of these elements are immortal. That means they don't have any destruction. They won't be destroyed ever. On the other hand, there are some elements which could be destroyed, which could be eliminated. Atom is something which is eternal. It cannot be destroyed. So there we find a very philosophical explanation of Paramanu or of atom, and this is something which is also related with the divinity or with the spirituality. So here we find how Indian philosophy talks on physics or metaphysics, and still it is a fascinating topic for researchers not only in India, also in abroad. Now I would like to say something about the atomism as described in Buddhism and also in the Jain texts. Though I have already mentioned a bit, but here I would like to explain. 2 realist schools of Buddhism, the Vaivasika and the Sautrantika, also present an atomistic conception of nature. So try to understand, dear students, all the Indian philosophical schools, they have given emphasis on atoms, and according to them, these are the components which have made the nature or environment. According to the Buddhist schools of philosophy, especially the Vaivasika philosophy, matter is a collection of the substratum of color, taste, odor and touch. Atoms are the minutest units of the Rupa Skandha collection of material elements. So, the Buddhist schools, or the particular Buddhist school here, the Vaivasika, it is giving emphasis on the physical aspects of matter and how matter constitutes atom. So, here we find perhaps a link between physics and atomology, or physics and the science which is responsible to explain atoms. So, atoms are what? These are the smallest units of matter, and in that matter we find the elements like color, taste, odor and touch. It is quite amazing that Indian philosophers at that time, they thought on certain scientific concepts which were perhaps very much difficult to understand for the ordinary people, and also how they tried to link all these with the concepts of divinity, spirituality, culture, and try to remember, till now the Indian philosophers, they didn't talk about God. What they are trying to say, that is, they are giving emphasis on universe. When they are talking on universe, perhaps they are talking on the power of the supreme soul, but that is unidentified. So, this is something which is very much amazing, and I think this is something which fascinates us, or which helps us to understand the mysteries of the creation theory from the Indian perspective. Now, I would like to say something about how the Jain philosophers, they saw atomism. All the entities admitted in their ontology except souls and space are constituted by material elements, that is Pudgalas. Atoms are eternal as regards their substance, and each exists by occupying one space point, pradesa. So, here we find one more concept which is quite amazing and unique in my opinion. That is, atom is not only a matter as per the Buddhist ideas, it is also something which is occupying space. So, Buddhist and Jain philosophers, they were talking on physics, or something which is related with the origin of matter, and the origin of matter and the genesis of atoms, both these ideas are not different, and they are carrying some kind of a relationship. So, I think this justification is quite interesting from the point of scientific understanding of Paramanubad, and also the philosophical ideas related to Paramanubad, where we find that nature is something which is spiritual, which is divine, which is undefined, but which is also scientific. Dear students, now I would like to say something about the Charvakas, the non-conformist, or perhaps the radical school of Indian philosophers, and they were the people who questioned the system which is the root of our culture. Also, they showed their disbelief for the existence of God. They were also very much skeptical about the concept of rebirth. Rather, they believed that we have one birth and we need to enjoy the life. If we need to debt from some people to fulfill our materialistic aspirations, we are welcome to do so. They were the propounders of materialism. So what they would like to say with regard of Paramanubad or atomism, Savavavada, which is the strongest form of ontological naturalism in Indian scenario, literally means the view of individual nature or essences. The hardcore naturalists, Charvakas, admit 4 types of basic material elements: earth, water, fire and air. Here earth means soil. They reject atomism. However, since they refuse to admit any imperceptible thing, thing, in their ontology, including God, soul, akasa and all kinds of non-natural forces, the material elements are said to possess some qualities naturally. So, the Charvakas, they were not that much sure of the existence of atoms because they only believe in those things which are natural, which we can see, which we can feel, which we can sense. We cannot see atoms, like we cannot see God, soul, akasa or sky. So, their perception was or is, if we try to situate them in the contemporary world, that they did not believe in something which is invisible or which is something which cannot be defined or identified. As we cannot define or identify atoms, especially without any kind of scientific intervention, and during that time it was not possible for the Indian philosophers to have that kind of experiment to show atoms, that made the Charvakas very much skeptical about its presence. As they questioned God, also they questioned atoms, and also they showed their disbelief for the creation theory, which I feel. The Charvakas, they were very practical and they never tried to find out any religious explanation or any kind of religious sanctity or justification for the natural world. According to them, fire is hot and it's natural. Ice is cold, it's also natural. Here we cannot try to find anything which could indicate towards any kind of divinity or the wishes of God. So their approach was very much practical and pragmatic, but it was not that much scientific though, as they do not believe on Paramanubad or atomism just because they couldn't able to see atoms or Paramanu. Now I would like to say something which is against the theory of Paramanu or atoms. You can ask me the question, like, while I am teaching environmental sociology and my topic is on how environment has been portrayed in Indian philosophy, then why I am giving so much importance on atoms? Dear students, we need to understand in Indian philosophy, they always try to find out the genesis or the roots of the elements which constitute the environment. As I talked on Pancha Mahabhuta, earth, water, fire, etc. So, to define their origin, to define their roots, atoms were very much important, because atoms constitute the elements, and those elements are the part of the environment. And if we would like to have a bigger idea, then atoms, they constitute the universe. So, we are talking about the cosmic world, through which we are trying to understand how the Indian philosophers, they talked on environment or nature. It was very much philosophical, very much hypothetical, but it's not that much direct. It's very much fine and subtle. So, we need to understand these correlations between philosophy and science to apprehend how nature or environment had been portrayed in Indian philosophy. As we are having two different schools which were against of this atom theory or Paramanubad, so which I have just mentioned in the beginning of the talk, right, which I am now going to initiate. So, there I must say that these two schools were, what I can say, like that they tried to question the presence of atoms. There are two important cosmological theories in the anti-atomic camp, Prakriti Parinama Vada and Brahma Karana Vada. Of these two, the first, a Shankho view that the world evolves from Ur or nature or Prakriti, is more relevant in the discussion of naturalism. Ur nature is an ever dynamic whole of all pervasive magnitude, having three constituent principles or gunas: Satya, Rajas, Tamas. Satta has the power to illuminate, Rajas to activate, and Tamas to restrain. So, here we are find what I can say, like an approach which is against or perhaps which is countering the presence of atoms. So, Shankho view of the evolution of world, which I have also mentioned in one of my previous slides, talks on Ur or nature or on Mula Prakriti. And according to this particular Shankho view, that the world has evolved from the Mula Prakriti or from the Ur, and that Ur is something which has been constituted with Satya, Raja and Tama. And these are the three qualities or gunas which every human being they possesses. So, what are these? Satta is the power to illuminate. That means when you are justifying something. Rajas to activate, when you are proactive to do any work. And tamas to restrain or to control yourself. So, here we find something which is not that much scientific, but quite a humanistic approach of nature, and which is not talking on atoms, rather giving the importance on the power which we possess within, and perhaps that is responsible for the creation of the nature. So, here we find something which is bit philosophical, where we can find a connection between nature and the human beings, which perhaps, what I may say, like in later years, perhaps encouraged Bandana Shiva to talk on ecofeminism, where she tried to link Mother Earth with women. So, here we are not going to justify or discuss or to judge the scientific explanation of Shankha school with regard to the creation of the world and how they negate Paramanu or atoms, but definitely this explanation is very much interesting from the perspectives of Indian culture, where we give emphasis on the human potentials. Now, I would like to end my lecture with some ideas on naturalism, which talks on self and consciousness. When we talk on Indian philosophy, it is something which is highlighting the various components which are responsible for our mindfulness. Indian philosophers of mind, self and consciousness are of naturalist persuasion. Most systems subscribe to soft naturalism except the Charvakas and the Advaita Vedanta. Regarding mind and consciousness too, the materialist Charvakas are hard naturalists and the spiritualist Advaitas are non-naturalists. However, naturalists and non-naturalists alike approach mentalistic concepts on the basis of our lived experience. That is, they theorize on these concepts at the personal level using the vocabulary eminently suitable for expressing human experiences. Dear students, before my conclusion, I would also like to add one more important point to know Indian philosophy, and in the light of Indian philosophy to know nature. We often talk on karma. What is karma? Karma means something which is very much pertinent to define the human nature, and also it's something which helps us to be moral. If we conduct any good work, then definitely we will get the good results, and if we are not good to others, then definitely something bad is waiting for us in future. This is the concept of karma, and here also we find that this concept of karma is also associated with naturalism or nature, and something in Indian philosophy is helping us to understand how can we protect nature or environment if we give emphasis on the doctrine of karma. If we do good to the nature, then the mother nature will protect us, and if we are bad to the mother earth or the nature or the environment, then we will definitely get the results, and we got the results through the various natural calamities which are truth to us. So, dear students, I think this lecture on environment and its position in Indian philosophy must be thought provoking for all of us, so that we protect nature as a part of our respect to Indian philosophy, where we have read karma or the doctrine of good and bad.